on ET Now, and I'm Ruchi Bhatia. Remember, this is the first and only daily show in India dedicated to startups and entrepreneurship. We have a power-packed show lined up for you over the next 20 minutes. So straight away, get to business. Remember, just 3 weeks to go for the general elections, and social media firms and the Election Commission have agreed on a code of ethics for the entire industry. Remember, this is coming in the wake of issues like fake news, and there is an increased focus on political advertisements and how to enforce the 2-day silence period ahead of the voting. Social media companies such as Facebook, WhatsApp, Twitter, TikTok will create a priority reporting mechanism and appoint dedicated teams during the polls for taking expeditious action on anything and any violations that are reported. They've also agreed to not allow any political advertisements 2 days before the polling. The code also promises to increasingly look at all the issues with respect to political advertisements and will ensure that there is transparency in political advertisements. And to discuss more on that, we're joined now by Apar Gupta, who's a Supreme Court lawyer and also co-founder of the Internet Freedom Foundation. Apar, good evening and thanks for speaking to us. Let me first begin by asking you, I remember last week when we were talking to you, when a lot of these social media websites had reached out to the Election Commission, and you had said that there is a lot of gap in terms of what the Election Commission wants these websites to do versus where things are standing now. After the code of ethics that have come in, what's your own assessments? Do you think this is going to aptly be able to deal with issues such as fake news, one of the big issues of concern for the Election Commission?
So I think firstly the code of ethics is also falling short of what can be done, and the first thing to immediately notice is that this is a code of ethics. It's ethical. So it's not a legal compliance, and there's no penalty which will result if they don't follow it or if they're not able to basically comply with what they have set out they want to achieve through these ethical requirements which they are themselves proactively now enforcing. So, there's just a gap of accountability here. There won't be any binding legal duty. And in a sense, I think so. Even the Chief Election Commissioner, Sunil Arora, who held a press conference announcing this code, he said that it's a good positive move forward, but a lot remains to be done. Now, of course, if this is coming from the very office of the Election Commissioner, they themselves are a bit concerned that this may be not catering to the entire gamut of problems which arise. One small thing, I think, so which is fairly positive as well, but falls short and is inadequate, is the pre-certification of political advertisements, which is now being made transparently available through what's called the political ad library. So basically, if you go on Facebook or Twitter, you can just see which candidate has purchased how many political ads, and all of them are certified by the platform. But the problem is that even the level of transparency there is very, very low. For instance, if you go into Twitter, you have to search per candidate, so the total ad library is not visible to you, and it's basically left to a lot of guesswork, manual inputting, and a lot of labor to get a bigger sense of what's happening on these platforms and how a political party is using them.
Apar Gupta, so absolutely, you've said a lot needs to be done. There are a lot of loopholes that have to be plugged. What's your own view about that 48-hour silence period that the Election Commission wants them to adhere, which now the companies have said that they will be looking to do it. But how difficult really is going to be that exercise? I mean, traditional media itself, they've not been able to adhere to something like that. But what about social media websites?
I just think, the 48-hour rule is ripe for violation. I don't think so there's any stopping the 48-hour rule in terms of what impact it will have on people who are speaking up online. Because we forget that a lot of the advertisements and the promotional posts which are being done are organic posts being done by people who are ideologically inclined towards a certain party and maybe under some kind of tacit support or maybe receiving some kind of financial payments for doing this kind of work. such as fan pages of a particular politician or a political party. The second thing is that the 48-hour silence rule is not even enforceable against newspapers, as you know, panelists last time on your show pointed out very clearly. So I just think that the 48-hour time period on social media platforms will be something which will be very troubling and will in fact be violated to a large degree. I think what may make a difference though is how the Election Commission responds. So if the Election Commission, even on noticing one small violation or a clear case of violation, immediately cracks the whip on a candidate, then it can set some kind of positive precedent and have a deterrent effect. But that depends on its political will and how far it wants to go with enforcement.
Absolutely. The implementation really depends on the Election Commission also. That's one way of looking at it. But you said that, the response of Election Commission is going to be critical in terms of any sort of deterrent on the politicians. How effective do you think is it going to be? And can the Election Commission really do it? I mean, 48 hours before the polling really happens. I mean, what kind of steps can the Election Commission really take to ensure that social media networks are not misused?
So the thing is that it set up this mechanism, and first there's the institutional mechanism of the Election Commission where it has these media monitoring committees at the district and the state level. And now they are empowered to have social media monitoring as well. And to facilitate a bridge between these media monitoring committees, which actually check up on social media, and the social media companies, you have this representative organization called the Internet and Mobile Association of India. And also the platforms themselves will have a priority help desk in which both the district and the state level monitoring committees can reach out to them. Now, theoretically, this seems like a very good framework, but ultimately it depends on the capacity, the competence, the staffing, and the political will, autonomy which is provided to these people. So, it depends a lot. You may have these rules that booth capturing won't be done, that liquor won't be distributed, but these are still done in India in a lot of parts when elections are near. So I guess a lot depends on how the Election Commission actually enforces and cracks the whip, and I'm hoping it does.
Absolutely. Enforcement by Election Commission is going to be critical when it comes to, political advertising and how to deal with issues such as fake news. But since we were talking about political advertising, let me go back to it, Apar Gupta. This is going to be one mammoth task. In fact, now the guidelines talk about exchange of more information to plug leakages. How doable is it? What kind of information needs to be, made more available so as to ensure that there is more transparency?
So, for instance, transparency has been a core problem, even how this entire system has been devised. All throughout, when the Election Commission has looked at how it deals with the challenges of growing digitization, it's only held meetings in rooms with all these platforms and companies. It's not invited any kind of public input from civil society organizations, with organizations who have a large history of knowing how the Election Commission functions, such as the Association for Democratic Rights, like ADR. So, transparency, how will this actually work in terms of nuts and bolts is something which I guess everyone should be reasonably reproachable towards. I think in terms of transparency, information sharing, there's a lack of detail right now. What is the kind of information? How periodically it will be shared? What is the format? Will members of the public have ability to make these complaints? And if, when, in what form, and to whom? So a lot of these details actually are still forthcoming. And I really don't know going forward how will all of this be done in a way, given that we're just 3 weeks away from the general election.
Absolutely, just 3 weeks away from the general elections. Apar, I need you to now talk to us about the one big concern that the Parliamentary Standing Committee on IT had raised, and they had asked the representatives of Twitter and Facebook to ensure that there is no foreign influence in the Indian elections. Now with this code of conduct being in place, What are the chances? How effective do you think this is going to be to ensure that there is no foreign influence, so to say, in the upcoming elections?
So I would also like to refer to a very good investigation which was done by a bunch of Economic Times journalists, I think Venkat Anand, who basically said that there are three Ps which are also dominating the WhatsApp messaging platform. And one of them is Pakistan. And like this is a recognizable concern that foreign players may be flooding content not only through paid posts but even through organic posts just to raise up social divisions within our country, given that we are a multicultural country. People talk in different tongues, they look a bit different, and there are various cultures which vary from Kashmir to Kanyakumari. So I really do think foreign interference is still
True.
an issue, and I don't think so we have addressed that well enough. Of course, in terms of ad transparency, etc., if somebody purchases ads on Facebook, there have been measures which have been made, but I don't think so. We've thought
Right.
through this problem.
All right. All right, a lot needs to be done, and it all really depends on how the Election Commission goes ahead with implementation. Apar Gupta, always a pleasure speaking to you on this issue. Many thanks for joining in. Let's quickly shift focus then. The government has finally relented and has given relief to the startups that were battling with angel tax. In a notification issued by CBDT 2 days ago, the government has given relief to startups who have applied for it. It also adds that the provisions of Section 56 will not apply to DPIIT registered startups. Remember, it was on 19th February that the notification had tweaked the definition of startups to a period of 10 years and had increased the turnover limit as well to 100 crores. To discuss more on that story, we're now joined by Srijit. He's a co-founder at True Elements, and Padmaja Ruparel, the CEO of Indian Angel Network as well. Let me first come to you, Srijit. Your startup has been battling with that tax notice for some time now. Do you think this is finally going to get over in the end? Do you see it getting resolved anytime soon?
No, it is completely over. Not done. There's nothing left for a startup who is genuinely raising money from individuals who have a PAN number attached to it. So there is no doubt, as long as it is a startup. That means anybody who is less than 100 crore in turnover and less than 10-year-old since existence will get complete exemption if the person is raising it from PAN card holders, from whether Indians or NRIs, whoever. As long as PAN card number is there and a self-declaration can be uploaded into DPIIT in the new nomenclature website. That's a self-declaration based exemption. So all of us are the beneficiaries of the first lot of startups who got this exemption. So we have been in consultation with the government with the help of bodies like IAN, IVCA, and various other bodies with DPIIT and CBDT. So at last we have got a exemption which is good enough for boosting the Startup India movement, because startup would be less than 10-year-old and would be less than 100 crore. And I believe there is discussion going on as to if the company's turnover is more than 100 crore, is there a way we could address those as well through accredited investor and various other ways, which I think in due course, once election settles down, it should also clear out. So as of now, the work which is done is good enough. Thanks a lot to the bureaucrats who have heard us. So till the discussion were happening, we were only hearing the story. We know. Sorry. Yeah. So in fact, it's solved. It is solved.
Absolutely. All right. I mean, that I'm sure comes as a huge sigh of relief. Padmaja, if I can come to you, there was a lot of back and forth that kept happening on this issue. Can one now safely say that the ghost of angel tax has been put behind? Is this the final closure that all the startups were really looking forward to?
No, you're absolutely right. In fact, this issue came up in the previous government in the budget of 2012, and that's exactly the next day that we picked it up at IAN. And it's been a 6-year long journey. But today, as we stand, and as Srijit mentioned, I think the demon of the angel tax has been laid to rest, number one. But I think more has happened which we don't talk about. There are two things that happened. One, I think it has become more of an enabling ecosystem on the startup side, because startups are now defined with a longer period, which is moved from 7 years to 10 years. Top line from 25 crores to a revenue of 100 crores. That's the second thing. And the third thing, it has unleashed domestic money. So what it has done, the February 19th notification that you mentioned and which was then backed up by CBDT, is the fact that if a company is raising up to 25 crores, it's exempt under 56. However, what is not included in this 25 crores is the money raised from corporates which have a revenue of over 100 crores and a market cap of over 250 crores. Number 2, if it is money raised from NRIs, and number 3 is money raised from SEBI registered VC funds. Now, what really that means is that a company or a startup raising, let's say 50 crores, out of which 20 crores is raised by let's say individuals and angels, that plus the 30 crores raised from these other 3 types of entities, it's all exempt. The company is now exempt from 56, but is able to raise a much larger amount. So that's a big step, and I think that's a big boost that startups should look at. And the second piece, which I think which has come in very nicely and made a very graceful entry into the startup ecosystem, is a sense of trust and transparency. As Srijit explained, that companies can now just load their, it's a DIY portal, load the relevant documents and you move into the certification. I think this is a big move because
Absolutely,
it suddenly
Padmaja,
moved
totally
into
get
DIY and self-cert and just an element of trust. But I do want to take the minute to actually give kudos to both DPIIT and CBDT for working together and getting this off the ground and done with.
Absolutely, we get your point on that, Padmaja, but you did talk about how it was only after a continuous dialogue between startup industry as well as DPIIT did this issue finally get resolved. Srijit, let me come to you. What's been your learning from this entire process, apart from, of course, the need for a dialogue between the two parties?
So I think we since beginning, even I got offended and I started this media help outreach because I was insulted by the income tax officer. But at that point of time, I didn't knew the whole legal system works because of the British legacy, works in a way that you have to prove yourself innocent until you're guilty. But the underlying jurisprudence which drives that is because we have 120 crore people. So the system is made to be tight enough that nothing falls through. So when we met these officers, only then we got to know that even a small definition change would give a lot of window for a lot of shell companies and Benami companies to come in, and as such, they are little bit skeptical about opening it up. Okay, once we showed them the way how you can differentiate between a startup and a shell company, and in terms of fundraise, in terms of employees' existence, in terms of GST filing, various stuff. So the biggest learning is the system is being built because for a reason, right? So if you need to get change in the systems, you need to work with the government bodies, not just because we need to understand why they are not able to do it or they won't do it because they have because just by releasing the small iota of definition change, they could probably open a Pandora box. So I think that is the biggest.
Absolutely.
And work with them.
Absolutely, Padmaja, let me come to you. Now we are picking up how the government could be looking at giving a separate definition for accredited investors, and that is going to get a lot of H&I funding as well into startups. How important do you think this is going to be, and will this go a long way in getting the much needed funds for the entire startup industry?
No, absolutely. I think you worded it perfectly. This will unleash domestic monies. It will unleash monies that was going into dead assets. It will move it from, this real estate and all of that into actually job creating as investments like startups. It will create a new India in terms of, innovation which is required. And I think, remember that startups are a very risky proposition. So it is domestic money. It is people who are investing, who are close to the entrepreneurs, who bring in mentoring, who bring in help, who bring in guidance, who bring in market access. Those are the ones that can help the companies grow. you can't really build on the ground startups from monies from all over the place. It has to be local money, it has to be domestic money. And the reverse is also true, that these startups, these innovative startups will bring a value add to our own domestic companies, because they bring in the new ideas and the new innovations and solutions which I think our industry can absorb and work with. So it's a two-way process, but I think this money is a big boost for startups to really breed in India, create jobs. As the companies grow, they create new net jobs. It's not replenishment or not replacement. So this is very critical, and this monies, I'm sure, will create a lot more, many more startups, many more Srijits creating ventures.
All right, on that note, Padmaja Ruparel as well as Srijit, many thanks for taking your time out and speaking to us. And definitely the ghost of angel tax, one can safely say it is far behind the startups. All right, moving on, it's time for your weekly funding meter in startups. And this week we saw 12 deals worth a lot of money flowing in. And this was almost $346 million as compared to 17 deals of lesser amounts that we saw last time around. The notable deals this time around were the $300 million that was raised by Ola, the $10 million by pregnancy and parenting platform HeroFi, and $9 million raised by the marriage ceremony solutions portal, that is Sitara. So lots of deals brewing in this time around. And last but not the least, the national award-winning actress Kalki Koechlin, who stars in hugely popular web series Made in Heaven and Bollywood hit Gully Boy, has established herself as an actor of merit, but has also gone on record to say that she's a small pawn in the sea of others' chess players. She was talking to Avan Dabash about her breakthrough in cinema and the growth of web series, women in Bollywood, and much more.
With films like Devdi, Margarita with a Straw and Shaitan, Kalki Koechlin has established herself as an actor with merit. Now Gully Boy is getting rave reviews and Made in Heaven is hugely popular. I chat with Kalki about women in Bollywood, digital content and her most challenging role. Kalki, lovely to have you with us on ET Now. Many thanks for joining in. Now let's start off by talking about the new High Design collection. It's all about being bold, a go-getter. Can you tell us how that resonates with you?
I think, in my job there's lots of different avatars. I personally am the free-spirited one. I also have to play, the glamour role. I have to play the red carpet role. I have to play different characters. So there's lots of contrast in the collection.
A great performance for Made in Heaven and Gully Boy. Can't wait to watch that. Can you just tell us how you're looking at the entry of digital and web series in Bollywood?
I think that they're two different mediums. There are times where I want to watch things alone in my room. I think it's really a writer's game because you need to write really fast for web series. You need to be ready to react to fans' opinions and, tweak things.
Kalki, there have been a lot of breakthroughs when it comes to the gender pay gap for women, women equality. How far along the road do you think we have reached?
We've reached the point where we admit there's a problem. But I think it's going to take a couple of generations for real equality to set in. I think that our generation, women are feeling more empowered and are speaking out about their inequalities. But only when we start applying that to our children and our kids grow up with this sort of normalization of gender fluidity, I think that will take a couple of generations.
Well, we're a business channel, so now I'm compelled to ask, what did you do with your first paycheck?
I was studying in London and I had to waitress on the weekends to pay for.
All right, a candid Kalki Koechlin in conversation with Avan Dabash. With that, we're completely out of time on this edition of Startup Central. Many thanks for watching.